Hello and welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to talk about the Mechabellum update 141, which has a bunch of balance adjustments and a bunch of interesting ones too. So the first one is about the Hound. The Hound XP rate required went up by 55%. In numbers it's 450 and that's plus 150 XP, which is a lot. And the reason why this is happening is clear. The Hound is very good in situations where it shouldn't be very good. AKA it is a unit that is both medium chuff and chuff clear at the same time. And it does scale very well with levels actually, because it has a shotgun attack that allows it to counter units that it usually should lose to if it gets the required level ups, which it will most likely will, since it's clearing chuff at the same rate as an Arclight, but does have a much lower XP ceiling, so they can outscale other units that are supposed to counter them. And the reason why we don't want this is most likely because Hounds will just get spammed into oblivion, which is the main issue here. The XP required is a lot more, and this means the Hounds will not get their levels as quickly, especially not by taking towers and whatnot if you're flanking with them, which means you have more time to get them, and this is an indirect huge nerf to the armor upgrade. The armor upgrade is the only upgrade that scales directly with levels, so a higher Hound level means more damage absorption, and this means that the Hound loses harder in matchups where the armor is relevant, which is Fangs, if they are carry Fangs, Mustangs, Vulcans with Scorch especially, and also the Fire Badgers, which are very, very sad if there's a unit that has a pretty high armor and pretty it has a huge fire rate and very low damage in terms of even with Scorch. So this Hound change will make them more into the medium chaff unit and will make them unable to carry as hard as they currently can do, which is a pretty bad thing considering they have 5 models and the other chaff clearing units usually do not have as many. And why not adjusting their stats at all? The stats are, in my opinion, also pretty fine. I don't think there's much a problem there. Could have maybe adjusted something about the movement speed and whatnot, but I think this is a fine change. It's a good nerf because the Hound is pretty strong as is in this specific scenario where you spam a lot of them early. Next up, Abyss changes. The Abyss is a abysmal unit, no pun intended, and thus it does have the upkeep of the War Factory, although being terrible. So now they decide to remove a little bit of the upkeep and also make the efficient maintenance, the upgrade that would reduce the upkeep, cheaper. Which means, yeah, in general the unit is easier to keep and easier to keep for longer. Vertical sweep, wreckage, recycling and photon coating all went down 50 credits as well. I don't think this is too interesting except the vertical sweep, because vertical sweep has the ability to hit units and towers straight up in a line and you can't block it. Wreckage, recycling, photon coating probably not upgrades I would ever click. Yeah, and the effect of disintegration has been adjusted. It's now every 15 seconds, but it's only 30% current HP damage, but it does also slow the movement speed by 40% for 5 seconds. This problem still is this unit does underperform, has way worse stats than the War Factory, and still has an upkeep. So I think this upkeep should be entirely scrapped if they keep the stats the same. I don't think the Abyss does need any upkeep. The upkeep is there to make a unfair unit stats-wise more balanced, in my opinion. Doesn't have anything else to do. There is no upkeep on Vulcans or whatnot. This is not Warcraft 3, and this is not something that other units are facing. And the War Factory is the only unit that has to have this, because in order to exist in the game with the current stats it has, it needs this kind of nerf. The Abyss, in my opinion, does not have any producing techniques, does have less shooting targets that it can acquire. It has to shoot the same unit pretty much with the beam, and I don't think that is necessary. But yeah, we will see. I don't think this makes Abyss good enough. I think it makes it better, but I don't think this is the correct way to do it at the moment. They don't do their desired role, which is Titanic damage, Titanic stats, units, effects, none of it. Alright, Overlord, a very small change, 115 range to 120, and also a attack decrease. I don't think the attack decrease is necessarily a problem, although I don't think it's necessary as well. Now, you would say 5 range, I mean, what the hell, that is not a big deal. It is in case of the Overlord, because the Overlord is usually a unit that is used in aggressive pushes, and it is something that is set up behind units that have lower range than the Overlord, which means they will tank for it and they move more forward before the Overlord gets targeted by the rest. And this is especially true for medium chaff units such as sledgehammers, because they have similar movement speed. So sledgehammers and Overlords are a very good combo together. They protect each other from their respective counters, and if you press launcher overload, you will reduce the range of the overload, but you will double the damage output pretty much. So this being scary, I can see the attack decrease while also having additional range. Now, obviously in long range engagements, this can also make a difference, although 5 range is less effective in that case. But it's still above. Above is above, and on a big unit like the Overlord with tremendous damage output, I think that makes a big difference. What I'm missing here is I think the Overlord still has the problem that it gets countered by masked missile interceptor, and that hurts its main carry role and increases the chance of only seeing it with launcher overload and in these very aggressive cheesy pushes with jump drive and whatnot. But its carry status as a big blob powerful air unit is my opinion not really there. So I would have liked to see a change there, but I think this one is a small buff with a pretty good impact rate, and I like that. Next up is the Phantom Ray. Phantom Ray's attack got increased. I'm not sure why they're doing this. The Phantom Ray, I think, does fulfill its role right now pretty good. Gets countered by all the stuff that the Overlord gets countered by as well. It is a unit drop that will appear quite often, and quite many of them actually. And it's already been successfully played in different roles now with the oil cheese or the armor, even some flanking stuff if you're Sarah and whatnot. So I think I'm not quite sure if it needed the 5%. Makes burst stronger as well, but I mean, I don't mind it, to be honest. I don't care. The Sabertooth also gets 5% for some reason. Saberteeth do struggle a little bit if there is modifiers on the stats. So if they're hunting tarantulas, for example, they might lose if there's a fortified tarantula, and this attack will be a little bit impactful in that case. But other than that, this is just Sabertooth carry late game stats. That's all. Makes sense because last patch we saw extended and improved and mass-produced Saberteeth. So an increase to those stats is actually quite relevant. Alright, last one. We have a variant. The improved melting point no longer increases attack, which was 50% before, and the increased range was changed from 20 to 10, so nerfed. And the card level decreased from level 2 to level 1. So this one I really dislike. Why? Because they just recently changed this card from increasing the level. And I do not like double changes most of the time, unless it's a nerf and a buff at the same time. But this is a double nerf, straight up, halving the range into something that is not as relevant now. 10 range is just a temp range, that doesn't make much of a difference. And also removing the entire attack as well. I don't think that is warranted. That is something that was warranted for something like Extended Range Vulcan, because there was a card where you don't even need to pay any additional cost, you just pay the card cost and that's it. And there the additional damage and whatnot was problematic, was nerfed, and now I think is in a good spot. I think it's usable, but it's not very powerful in terms of making your Vulcans more effective. This one I do not like because it's a double nerf. You could just run with the -10 range or reduce the attack or whatnot, but I don't think you need to do both. And I think this fills up the entire roster with more cards that are unusable, but at the same time fill the pool with stuff you don't want to pick. And I really, really dislike that. I think there should be cards that you are interesting to you to pick all the time, with very different directions, with different power levels. Of course, I mean, you have early investment, you have late investment cards all the time, but I don't see any reason here to double hammer the card. It is a very good card, but it was never has been a must pick card, and it's always a very greedy card, as all the improved versions are. And so I think either or was fine. Both, I think it's overkill, and I'm a little bit worried that this card will get into the dumpster and never see play outside of that, and then fill our pool with a useless card. I think you should remove the card if you want to go that route. If you think it's problematic, straight up remove it. Or change it from range to something else. Because range is, I think, the biggest offender. And 20 range is huge. It's the same thing with Improved Wasp. I don't think you can change Improved Melter if you keep Improved Wasp in the game. Because that one is also a humongous outlier in terms of effect from improved units. Alright, and then the last one is not a unit change or anything like that. Specialist. All the specialists who grant units will now unlock the corresponding units at round 1. This is, I think, one of the coolest changes they have made to specialists, because there was a nerf in all of these specialists by delaying the unit's appearance. It's just because you gain a lot of tempo early, which you shouldn't, but you also don't get to play your strategy. So a Sabertooth spec has to wait for the Sabertooth to arrive, which is not too bad, it's not too long. A Firebadger, for example, spec would like to spec Firebadger early because of the 10 increased range, but you cannot deploy it unless you're hitting round 3. Which was fair in that sense that you get a free unit, but not fair in the sense you don't get the tech earlier. I think this is great. I think that you can try to play a true Firebadger chuff clearing style that you couldn't play before because the unit is coming in later. And it's also not that problematic because very few normal specs can actually buy a Firebadger on turn 1. I mean, you don't have the credits to do so. But it's on turn 2, and on turn 2 getting some Firebadgers out might enable you to get 3 or 4 packs easily in your third round, which is decent enough chuff clear, and not just throw them into a flank and sell out of them next turn. I like that. Same for Typhoon, very strong unit, comes in very late and now will appear early on the board. Also very interesting with the Farseer, because the Farseer is a very high impact early game unit, one of the more problematic ones in the drop. And now we get to get the fuzz here very early if we want to, and bring that out on turn 2, most likely, which means its power spike comes online earlier. And that is something pretty scary, I think. Typhoons have a very high ceiling until they scale and do something. The fuzz here does not. There's very little anti-missile options early, and I think that is gonna make the fuzz here a pretty scary one to get early down. It still has the same issues, you still can't mask them and whatnot because they get countered by missile interceptor pretty easily, but still it is a quite powerful change if you want to get them earlier. And also your anti-air option against some air cheese that people love to do. They love their turn 2 phoenixes and whatnot, even turn 1. And that is something the Vars here could technically prevent without unlocking any air-specific counter. It's not a big change for all the other specs that just unlock units, like the giant spec and whatnot, because they are not affected. It's just the Saber, Firebadger, Typhoon, Farseer, these kind of units where they spawn one. Also the Marksman, by the way, which also does make a difference. Even though you will unlock it on the second turn, you get a free unlock the very first one, so you could unlock 2 different units if you wanted to. So you can add 1 marksman and a crawler and start up with Fangs at the same time, and you get to block 1 more spot 1 turn earlier, pretty much. So you can get your way out of the double orange man, which is a possibility sometimes that happens. Alright, and that's it. There's some issue correction, whatever that means. It's just bug fixes, what they want to try and say. Alright, so I think overall interesting patch. Disagree on the improved meta, but everything else I think is interesting, and I always like the changes to the specialists, most likely just because they gain us more interactions earlier and make them more unique to play, and not just pick a quick supply or whatever, which comes online straight away but has less flavor and less less direction. I think I like that about this change. All right, so leave a comment if you disagree, if you agree, if you have some different wishes in terms of what should change and whatnot, and then I'll see you guys in the next turn. Bye bye.